Welcome back to On the Clock, our show about making the moments matter. I'm your host, Elisa Gums. Today, we're chatting about creating a home that reflects who you are with Jeanine Hays, who is the co founder of AphroChic, a lifestyle brand focused on African American life at home, and the co author of the upcoming book, AphroChic, celebrating the legacy of the Black family home. Jeanine, we're so excited to have you here on the Clock. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. So excited to be speaking with you today about the new book.
I've been a fan of Afro Chic for a long time now. You and your husband, Brian Mason, started it back in 2007 as a blog. Where did the idea or the inspiration come from?
Yeah, it's so crazy that 2007 now is like a long time ago. But the inspiration really just came from a love of interior design. I have always loved interior design from the time I was a child. Just the idea that you could create a space that reflected you was always very exciting to me. So it was my hobby because I was a lawyer when we started Afro Chic. And it was just a thing I would come home at night and want to write about people in design and about things that I was seeing in the world of home decor. And in particularly really wanted to write about people who looked like me. That was like the explosion of the blogosphere. It was 2007. So everyone had a blog, we started blogging, and I saw so many great home decor websites, and I would be looking through and looking at them, but then I would be like, why is no one Black? Like, I know Black people who have nice homes. I grew up with a home. Everyone in my family's had a home for generations. So it just felt like something was missing. And Afro Chic really wanted to fill a gap and just showcase Black interior designers, Black, makers, artisans, artists, just the whole gamut of what we know we are, but just weren't seeing in mainstream blogs at the time.
What was it like for you making that leap? Because you said this has always been your passion. You had a day job, a career doing something else. You would come home and do this as your passion. What was it like for you to like pull that trigger and say, I'm gonna go do what I love?
It's I always say like it's very organic. One, I always say Afro Chic has a life of her own. Like she just does stuff and we kind of just go through the door like this is not what we thought was going to be our life, in any way at all. I couldn't have imagined that this would be what I was doing. But I think um it was a very organic process, and it was almost just kind of letting things flow. I was working as a policy attorney in the state of California, working on domestic violence and sexual assault prevention. This was during the Obama administration. So it was really good work, but it was also really hard work. And so, I needed a place that I could just go to at the end of the day and not be thinking about violence prevention work. And so for me, Afro Chic just became this space that I could relax in, that I didn't have to think about the outside world in. And then it just became a space that other people came to as well. We just started to see that there was an audience, people that were also excited to see more representation in the design world. And once that audience was there, it really just grew. We wanted to continue to create more for that audience. And it came in the form of not just a blog, but then a product line. And then we opened an interior design side of our firm. And then we started writing books and we wrote Remix, Decorating with Culture, Objects, and Soul, which was our first book, which was really about teaching people how to express themselves at home and how to bring culture into their space and not be afraid, like to bring culture into the home. And it just has grown and grown to now we're on our second book, magazine. And I just finished, my husband and I just came home from Baltimore, was working on our very first documentary as well. So it's blossomed into so many things, but in a lot of ways, it's all been the same thing. And that's telling the story of Black people through several different lenses.
So as you just said, the company has evolved and I love how, she has her own like personality. You're like Afro, she has a life of her own.
Yes.
You mentioned that it expanded into product design, interior design, the full fledged content creation. Tell us what the company looks like now in terms of what it offers and what that journey has been like for you to get from a blog to here.
Wow. Yeah, the journey has been really interesting. But yeah, AphroChic now is a media brand and a design brand. And I don't know if anyone else does that. I think it's just something that we have carved out and it makes sense for Brian and I in terms of what we're doing. But the media side is all about looking at Black life still through that lens of home, but looking at every aspect. So we are not just looking at interior design anymore. We're talking about wellness. We're having conversations about food, art, travel. It's just a much broader look at the Black lifestyle. And so we have the Afro Chic magazine, which is our lifestyle magazine, where every quarter we do a deep dive into Black people from all over the world. This is not just Black Americans. We really look at the diaspora, and we're looking at the people who are making waves, who are doing something new, who are offering us new ideas, who are innovating. That's really exciting for us to be able to do. So the media side of the brand does all that. And then we still are doing, writing. We're writing, like I said, our second book. And this book, Afro Chic, celebrating the legacy of the Black family home, was just an amazing journey for Brian and I to go in, really thinking about our own stories, how we grew up in families that have had homes for generations in some of the oldest cities in our nation, where we've seen Black representation for hundreds of years, and being able to reflect on our family stories and a lot of other people's stories as well. And then we still do design. We do design work. We have product lines. Our products are now have homes on luxury websites, which we're excited about because we always wanted to see our design work, which is Black women with afros. This is like one of our pillows has the silhouette design on it. Black hair, Black just celebration of Black identity on things like a pillow, your bedding, fabric. That's exciting to us. And to see that in the luxury space has just been amazing. And so people can go and bring that Afro chic aesthetic into their own home, just celebrating the beauty and depth of our culture. So, we have a number of different pots boiling all the time. And it's honestly been incredible and wonderful. I don't know if I ever knew that life could be so unscripted. I think a lot of times you kind of think of like when you're younger, you're always scripting your life. You're like thinking like in your 20s, like, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have like 2 kids by the time I'm this age, whatever. You're thinking that you've got it all planned. And the journey for us has honestly just been letting go of the plan and just being open to what comes next. A lot of times it's filling gaps. If there's something we're not seeing there that's talking to Black people, we're trying to figure out, okay, well, we need to create that because it's not there. There's no product line that speaks to African Americans in terms of home decor. Well, we need to create it because of course, Black folks want, cool pillows that also reflect who we are. There's not, a Black magazine that specifically is focused on really just like lifestyle, like home decor, food, those sort of aspects. Okay, well, then we just need to create that. There hasn't been a Black book that's talked about home decor through a Black lens. When we wrote our first book, there hadn't been a Black book that talked about home decor through a Black lens in 10 years. It was like, this is really ridiculous. So we need to do something about that. And it's almost been 10 years since we wrote that book that we're now writing this book, and realize like the story needs to be told in a more in-depth way. So a lot of times it's filling in gaps and honestly just having a whole lot of fun, being unscripted, doing the things that just bring us joy. And somehow it's all worked out, and we're honestly just enjoying and embracing life every day. That's what I feel like is a lot of sort of the Afro chic world that I get to live in.
I'm going to get to the new book in just a second, but as you were talking, I started thinking about the fact that you guys have had some really impressive collaborations with major brands. And of course, you're one of those organizations, I think similar to Black Enterprise, where you were in this space highlighting Black people who were doing things that nobody else was talking about for years. And now, in the past few years, we've seen that break a little bit more into the mainstream with the racial justice movement and with retailers like Target or marketplaces like Etsy trying to highlight their Black makers. So, what have the past couple of years been like
Mm.
for you guys?
The past couple of years, yeah, it's been a reckoning. I mean, absolutely, the Black Lives Matter movement changed everything. It changed everything in how we communicate as a brand. We felt like it was very important for us to start to make sure that the partners that we worked with, that there was an alignment, that it was like, we have to really look much deeper into our brand partnerships. And if we're at the table with Fortune 500 companies, which we've worked with many over the years, we have to make sure that we're representing at the table. Like we're really saying like, okay, you guys want us to go and talk to Black folks about something new that you're doing. Well, we want to know what you guys are doing, and we started not to be afraid to ask questions, to push back. And also, we started not to be afraid to say no. There was a lot of fears, as an entrepreneur in general. Like, you don't want to say no. You're like, oh my gosh, I have to take every opportunity. And then as a Black entrepreneur, those opportunities don't come around as much for us. So when a big company shows up, you just feel like, I've just got to run with this. And we found our voice because we saw the people in the movement, out there marching in the streets, who were using their voice, and it became inspirational to us as well. And so the change has been interesting. A lot of brands, particularly in 2020, I guess for like 2021, really it started. You saw brands really like they would reach out. We want to work with you. We want to partner with you. We want to understand what is sort of African American home decor, or we never thought about a Black lens on design. We never really thought about Black consumers. And for us, it was really sitting down with those companies and saying, okay, yep, we hear you. And we're so glad that you reached out to us. But we have some questions about how you're really going to work with us. And it can't just be like, hey, you can just come onto our website and we'll put your products up there because we need more Black people, on our website. We need more Black folks. We developed in-depth partnerships. So right now we're working with only 2 stores for our product lines, and that's Paragold and First Dibs. And when we started working with Paragold, one of the things we loved is that they understood where we were coming from. We talked a lot about the need for deeper representation on their website. We talked a lot about what it meant for us as Black creatives in wanting to reach an African American audience with our products and wanting them to help us to do that. And they took all of that and they actually did. They helped us. They put a lot of money into marketing our brand so that people could find the product. So you can be online, like you can have stuff online, but if people can't find you, it doesn't really matter. They really helped us to grow the brand. And that has been probably one of our best partnerships that we've had because they understood, they listened, they learned from us. There were some things that they would send us that we were like, this isn't really going to speak to Black folks. And they would listen to us. And we together worked in collaboration to create an AphroChic shop that we're very proud of. So I think the change has been just more openness from brands, also pushing back with brands if it's like, hey, there aren't any other Black people at the table. Like when we're having calls with you, where's the representation? And just and talking to companies, and they're going like, oh, we do need to think about that. And sometimes we would recommend like, hey, we know somebody who would be great for this role,
There are more of
oh,
us out here.
you might want to speak to them, so it really has been a conversation. I think that a lot of folks probably have seen a slowdown. There's been that tapering off the last, I would say, 6 months, where I think a lot of people feel like we did it, and we can kind of go back to quote unquote normal. And so it still continues to be extremely important for African American entrepreneurs, if you're at the table, to keep pushing back in any way you can, and to not be afraid. And um I will say that even kind of played into the book as well, in our process with making the book. It is scary to come to your publisher and say, we want to really make a seriously Black home decor book. We want to talk about beautiful Black homes. We want to talk about slavery, emancipation, redlining, the Fair Housing Act, COVID and its impact on Black folks today, and how it's impact housing. And we didn't know if they would just be like, no, like there's why would a home decor book talk about history and like all of these racist policies, and like, but they became very open to the concept. There had been a lot of more diversity and inclusion at our publisher that had happened over the last couple of years. And so there was an openness and a readiness that they were like, you know what you guys are saying sounds so different. It's intriguing, and we want to support you in it. And I don't think that they would have been that way 10 years ago. I actually know they wouldn't have been that way 10 years ago. So the change that we're seeing through the Black Lives Matter movement, which is about, of course, social justice and our civil rights and activism, I think has created a change in the landscape. And hopefully, for those of us who have platforms, hopefully we can continue to find our voices more and more. But for us, it's just been like, hey, we're Black. We're at the table. We're not hiding that. And we want to have a conversation with you. And if you want to have a conversation with us, it's really great.
That is the perfect segue to talk about the new book. It celebrates the Black home. Can you talk to us about the importance of home in general, and then about the importance of home specifically in our community? Because you just touched on so many things around culture, history, when it comes to Blacks and home ownership.
I mean, home is, it's our safe space. Home is where we can come in and just be. That's what home has always been to me. It's always been that feeling of safety. And when I close the door and I come home, I can just be myself. And I think that feeling of home, I actually do think is also the Black feeling of home as well. And the Black community is that feeling of safety. It's interesting because we've had a lot of conversations about what the Black family home means to people. We asked every one of the homeowners in the book, what does the Black family home mean to you? Every single person answered safety. And it was interesting because I've talked to colleagues who are white. Home means something different. Home means success. Home means like, oh, I got a home. I'm successful. I've made it. I'm able to own something. But for Black people, it really came back to safety, and that was really interesting for both Brian and I to continue to explore as we wrote this book. The Black family home, it's a family story. For Brian and I, this whole thing started because we were working on an interior design project with one of our collaborative partners. We collaborated with Lowe's, and they had a project where they said, hey, we want you guys to do a home makeover. And, we were like, yep, we'll do that, but we want to do something that gives back. So we had a home that actually had been in Brian's family for 6 generations. His sister had just moved in with her family, and the house needed a lot of work. And so we said, you know what, we're going to do this Lowe's project at, my sister-in-law's home. And we were able to take the house and really kind of bring it back to its glory. And then when we started the magazine, we actually wrote about, oh, this is what we did and the process. And it wasn't just writing about like, oh, here's what paint we put up or, the artwork. We actually dug into a lot of family history. So it was actually sitting with my mother-in-law and her taking out the old picture books and being like, yes, this is where, my room was in the house. And this was Christmas morning in that house. And this is where mama, her grandmother, would sit at the breakfast table and eat her meals. And it just became this deep dive and this look into the history of my husband's family. It was really beautiful. And we learned a lot about what the family had gone through coming from the South, everyone moving up to Philadelphia, a lot of everyone living in one house together until the family had enough money that they could buy separate houses. And a lot of African American stories of home really follow that path. And so we started, as we heard these stories, we started saying, like, this is a story that needs to be told. And this is a missing part of American history of Black folks moving and coming, Great Migration. We know about it, we don't talk about it deeply enough. And so we realized that in talking about the Black family home, it was a much bigger story. It was a much bigger story about Black life in general, about people working to preserve their families, to get safe from violence in the South, to come up north, to start having a space for their family to grow and to have safe spaces where their family could grow and thrive. And that has been sort of the story of home, and the story of the Black family home, celebrating the legacy of the Black family home with this book, has really been telling the whole story as much as we can of what it's taken for African Americans to find home in America, which is our home. So it's really been, it's a complex story. And we realized that as we talked to the different homeowners, everyone was giving us a little historical tidbit of that story, because we had people that moved out west, we had people that moved up north, we had families that stayed and remained in the South, and we were getting this really beautiful picture of Black life and also the resiliency of Black life through looking at the Black family home.
You are such an expert in all things home design, and I want to be able to share that with our audience. So I'm going to move into some of your tips here. You and your husband moved from Brooklyn to upstate New York into what you call the Afro farmhouse. When you're decorating your home or taking on a project for a client, how do you approach it?
Mm. We approach it with feel. We are not like the designers who sit down and we're like doing CAD or anything like that. The first conversations that we have with our clients and even with ourselves is like, what do you want home to feel like? What do you want your home to sound like? What do you want? What is it like when the family comes over for holidays, and how do you interact together? Where does everyone sit? Where does everyone like to talk? Usually it's the kitchen, or where's the conversations really happen? Because that tells us a lot about the kind of furnishings, the kind of decorative items you want. It tells us about how the kitchen should be designed so that there is space for discussions and talking and laughing and sharing recipes and sharing stories. All of that comes into the design. So it's all about feel for us first. And it was the same when we moved upstate, to our new home. It really was like, what do we want this space to feel like? We were leaving Brooklyn, which is one of the hardest places. I've lived all over. Uh, Moving from Brooklyn was the hardest because Brooklyn was a place that when Brian and I arrived there, even before we moved, even before we lived there, it just felt like home immediately. Like it was like, and I always say, if you want, like, Brooklyn's like Black Shangri-La. Like you go, you just meet like all these amazing Black folks or your neighbors, people that you see on the subway, whatever. Everyone's doing something so interesting, and there's so much talent. It's everywhere around you, and you're just absorbing it because it gives you energy as well because everyone's doing something. So we felt so at home there, and then with the pandemic is what kind of forced us to move. And we became homeowners, which was really amazing. But we had to leave the city that we love, the place that we love. So what we wanted to do was try to make this home feel a little bit like Brooklyn. So we wanted to bring in that, still have the city vibe. We're in an area that is diverse, but it's definitely not as black as Brooklyn is. So one of the things that I said to my husband was like, I want people, when they come in this space, I want them to know it's black. Like, I want them to feel it. I want it to feel like it's like you just feel like the hug when you walk in. And so we really kind of started with that, and that really became finding a lot of black artists to work with in terms of the artwork for the home. We built out an incredible library in our space that is just full of books from some of our favorite authors from throughout the African diaspora. We went and sourced products from different parts of the continent, from Morocco, and from other parts of Africa, just bringing them into our space. A lot of artisan and handmade items, items that make you feel, items that are full of soul. And then we brought heirlooms into our home as well. We had pieces from an auntie, pieces from parents, my dad's old record player, like all types of pieces that just kind of made us think about the homes that we grew up in. And this home does feel like a hug. It just feels warm. And I would say to people, start with what you love. I mean, it's not, I think a lot of folks think like design is just like, it's so, they feel like it can be an overwhelming process. And I think that sometimes, the design magazines and all of those make it feel so hard, like you have to be an expert. But I mean, you don't. You just do what feels right to you and create the home that is about who you are. Don't like go on Pinterest and be like, I want to copy that home. Think about, maybe there's something in that home you like. You're like, oh, I like that they have a lot of art. Great. What do you like? Bring that home. And when you come in every day to your house, if you have the things you love around you, you're going to feel good. You're going to come home and you're just like, you're going to relax. You're going to feel good. And that's the most important thing.
One of the things that I love about both the new book and AphroChic in general is that it's not just about the Black home. I think it's also about Black joy. And there is not enough Black joy in this world or represented in this world. And especially, I think, after these last 2.5 years where we've all lived through the pandemic, home became everything for us. And a lot of people realize that they're not so happy in their homes. How would you say that we can all cultivate joy in our
Mm.
homes?
It is about, joy. I think that, that is something that, we we're doing interior design, we're doing home decor. That's home is the lens through which we, talk about Black life. But there's a lot of activism behind what we do. It's kind of like it's there. It's just like we're talking about home, but we're also really talking to you about some real, very real stuff. And I think that where the joy comes in is like not hiding. I think that's a part of it, because I think that when people feel like they can't fully be themselves, well, you can't have joy in that way if you can't fully be who you are, if you don't feel fully free to be yourself. And I think even in home decor, we have to feel that. We have to feel like we can fully be who we are. We have to feel that we can express ourselves. We have to feel that we can be as creative as we want to be. We can cultivate the lifestyle that we want to cultivate, and that freedom is where the joy comes in. And so I think just even in the home space, that freedom has to be there. And for Brian and I, it's honestly been, we don't look to a lot of, other brands. We don't, we don't look to a lot of other people or look outside. It's really like looking within. And I think that that helps people. And I hope that what we do as a brand is give people the feeling of like, do you. Like, give them that freedom to, because a lot of folks feel overwhelmed by, these industries that are, here's this trend and here's a color report and, all these different things. You're like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to paint my walls periwinkle this year? Like, you don't, and it's like, relax. Like, what do you like? What colors do you like? I love blue. So, it's like we painted a whole room in peacock blue. Like, it really is about, that expression. And for Black folks, I invite, like, just dig in and just feel happy and joyful in making your home what you want it to be, because this journey for us has been hard. Like, it started with emancipation. Like, it starts, I mean, because in slavery and during those times when my ancestors were enslaved, you didn't even really have a home. Your quarters could have been a kitchen for the big house. They were sometimes were used as like the stove, and then dirt floors, no comforts at all. There was no ability to personalize, in any way, because you were a captive. You were a person that was treated like you were lower, the lowest thing on earth. And so we didn't even have home. When home starts to happen for emancipated people, and after the emancipation happens, Black people actually are just pushed out of plantations, and left to die. There's a whole period in American history that's very little talked about of African Americans lining towns, lining the streets of towns, homeless, no food, dying in the streets, and no one doing anything about it. People walking past our bodies. So there was no home at all. And then Reconstruction happens. There's this era that happens, and Black people are fighting back. You have, one of the most progressive eras in American history, and we're starting to get, we're having things. We're building. We're becoming builders. We have all these skills, and so we are building our own homes, building towns, building communities. And the story of that is absolutely amazing. And unfortunately, there is a backlash to that. We know about Tulsa, but there were those types of riots all over the country where African Americans had places that were just safe for us. We just want to be left alone over here. We're just going to build our own thing. And people came in and destroyed those communities. And even after that, we still keep going. Like, we still, like, they've rebuilt Tulsa. Like, we still keep going. We rebuild. We start to rebuild homes. Then the Great Migration happens, and people are like, you know what? I need something better. I don't feel safe here anymore. I need something better for my family. So people move up north, people move west, and they start communities again. They start finding a space where they can grow and their family can thrive. And honestly, writing this book has just been an honor to tell the story, because every time I go back and look at the history that we talk about, it's just like, man, our ancestors were strong. Like, I can't complain, because what they had to go through, and every time there was a setback, kept going, because they believed in us. They believed in a future. They believed, in something better. And that belief is still there with every homeowner that we interviewed for this book, who they have gorgeous interiors. We have homes that are full of color. We have homes that are giant estates. We have people that have acres of land in North Carolina, live on farms. A lot of them are still thinking about the future. They're talking about their kids. They're talking about what they want to build for the next generation. They also want other African Americans, other Black people to see, like, we are here. We are doing it. Not necessarily the American dream of like white picket fence and all of that, but the dream our ancestors had to still live and thrive and keep moving forward. So to write this book and to show the beauty of Black people, to show these diverse aesthetics that happen in this book. It is so diverse in terms of what these homes look like, because no two homes look the same. And I think that's just because Black folk, everyone has their own style, and so it's embracing that. but then also to hear about the stories of these individual families and what they're trying to build. It's so inspiring. It's not a sad story. It's a story of resilience. There's a lot of inspiration in this book. And it's just to say, like, we have had a hard road. We need to celebrate, and we also need to continue to build so that we can continue to thrive, and that we can hopefully have generations of Black people owning homes and getting more and more, because ownership is important. It's not something that we can ignore. It is foundational to being able to build wealth.
Yeah. This has been so fascinating. Thank you so much, Jeanine, for sharing the unique ways you're helping people make the most of the time we've been given and also make the most of the spaces that we inhabit.
Um,
And thank you all for watching On the Clock. We'll see you next time as we continue to talk about working with purpose and living with passion.